Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar discussing the key result from the recent MEPC Marine Environment Protection Committee Extraordinary Session number 2, which concluded last week at the IMO headquarters in London. So the committee concluded on Friday with a vote on the adjournment of the adoption of the amendments of the MARPOL Convention that were to introduce mandatory and universal measures to decarbonize ships. So the anticipated Net-Zero Framework, initially approved in April this year, was not eventually adopted at this committee. So this outcome introduces a significant level of uncertainty in the development of maritime environmental regulation. So at Bureau Veritas, we understand the importance of providing clear and transparent information to our clients and stakeholders. So this webinar aims to explain the current situation, provide insight into the implication of the committee's decision, and offer guidance in this period of regulatory uncertainty. So we encourage today participants to prepare and submit questions. So you can type your question in the designated Q&A area, and we'll address the question at the end of the presentation. So today's presentation will be available as a PDF towards the end of the webinar. So you will find it in the handout section along with other documents that we'll provide. So the webinar today is structured into 5 parts. So the first will focus on the context and the significance of the vote. The second part will cover the impact of the vote. And then we will look at the position of the European Union. Then we will look at the collateral consequences, the items that basically were not adopted as well. And in the last part, we will show what solution we can bring to develop decarbonization strategy through OptiCARBON. So joining us today are Mr. Adam Capella and Mr. Sébastien Crouzet from Bureau Veritas Regulatory Department, Mr. Jordan Renoir from our Advisory Department, along with myself, Sustainability Lead in the Strategy Department. So last week, Adam, Sébastien, and myself, we attended the MEPC in London as part of Bureau Veritas delegation supporting the French flag delegation. So Adam, please, the floor is yours for the first part of our webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Julien, and hello, everybody. The Extraordinary Session 2 was indeed extraordinary. Extraordinary very far from what could have been expected after MEPC 83. Just to start, imagine a high-speed train with several stations to reach in time in order to implement the IMO strategy of carbon neutrality. Imagine the high-speed train stops suddenly. All the timetable meticulously conceived to make feasible the entry into force of the midterm measures should not have stopped. But the collapse of MEPC Extraordinary Session 2 is an unexpected shock. So how to assess the consequences of this session, of this vote? Is it still possible to recover any dynamics for the strategy? That are the key questions on which we would like also to enlighten the understanding of the session. I will start with the vote, but recall the context. The context which significantly deteriorated in the previous weeks with the campaign against the Net-Zero Framework and démarche actions to support the package. There are 3 facts which were to noted. First, radicalization of the opposition for economic, technical, legal, and ideological reasons, elevating the debate to principles. Second point, geopolitics mattered even more. There are some reasons which are not related to shipping, like trade or defense, with security aspects which entered into the debate. And unprecedented public threats against supporters by the State Department of United States, very far away from IMO tradition. So the session stumbled on several issues: explicit tacit adoption, which is very sensible because from tacit to explicit, you reverse the burden of the proof. And just note that even MARPOL would not have been adopted if it was proceeded on an explicit way. Interpretation of committee rules were also used, ETS fingering. So the last day, an hectic day, were near paralysis of the committee as the chair faced contradictory requests to vote for the NZF or to adjourn the session. And the vote of adjournment led to a sudden suspension. Imagine participants had to decide on an adjournment of 1 year, few minutes after discovering the content of the motion, without any debate, without any assessment of the proposal. So it was a blind vote, opening a gap year, an uncharted sea of uncertainties. And even if there were calls to discuss, to renegotiate, the question is still ahead of us. What is still negotiable? The draft resolution of the Net-Zero Framework was miraculously, and Sebastian will explain it, finalized and crystallized. The political divide is extreme, and there's no formal procedure to rediscuss before next year, before resuming the session. So the questions are completely open, and the stakes of the second part of the MEPC ES2 may be a very limited alternative, either a remobilization of the parties in order to vote once and for all, or a reopening of the resolution with new amendments, with new cycle of approbation, adoption, undermining definitely the NZF. The vote was clear and not clear. A majority of 57 delegates supported the motion. The motion avoided the mention of the Net-Zero Framework and any question on its support, any substantial opinion on the contents. So supporters of the motion claimed for the unity of the House and took a symbolic advantage by voting yes. As you know, in diplomacy, you should never say no. And the yes side gathered three groups, sharp opponents, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with allies from Arabic countries, United States and different flags. We are in the proximity of United States and Russia with its own group. But there were also countries more worried by the institutional drift and possible chaos, or countries motivated by specific reasons like food security. I think about African countries. But you can see in the list of the yes, China appears, and it shows the fragilization of the first majority of the MEPC 83. The abstention gathered different countries motivated by various interests, Greece and Cyprus expressing shipowners' position, or other countries like Japan, South Korea, which supported the initial Net-Zero Framework, where some pressures should act to explain their silence, even for Indonesia. And in the no, we can find Europe, of course, like-minded countries, the Pacific Islands, who are not resigned to drop out the ambition of limiting the climate change to 1.5 degrees, or Brazil, which was very involved in the discussions. As we know, Brazil hosts COP30 next month, or Singapore, which voted to reject the motion after supporting a 6-month adjournment. So the balance of power is not so clear, and we will find contradictory reasons to convince new flags. So next session we'll try for each side, it will be the opportunity to try to conquer or to reconquer votes, and we shall see. I will let the floor to Sébastien to detail the impact of this vote.
Good day to all. Thank you, Adam. So, as indicated by Julien and Adam, after the vote, the work and discussions stopped suddenly. There was no possibility to clarify this or that. The week of discussion ended abruptly, leaving us in a doubt. We must understand this adjournment as a pause, meaning that we will resume next year in 12 months exactly where we left off. And this is quite rare, making it unsettling. Indeed, it raises multiple of questions, created uncertainties at all levels. 12 months is both a long time and a very little time, depending on the arrangement and the compromises that may be found. But first and foremost, this raises numerous of questions regarding the future implementation timeline. Indeed, the Net-Zero Framework was scheduled to enter into force in March 2027 for data collection during the following calendar year, meaning in 2028, and a GFI reporting in 2029. But this is no longer the case. Therefore, next year, if the amendments are adopted with a tacit acceptance mode, as it is generally the case for the amendment to MARPOL Convention, it means that at this stage, the amendment could not enter into force until March 2028 at the earliest. This would be for data collection in 2029 and the first reporting in 2030. 2030 would thus be the first year where the ship would have to calculate their GFI and carry out their GFI compliance balance. However, this is extremely theoretical at this stage. Indeed, we are entering an unknown zone. And I would like to draw your attention to three aspects which, it seems to me, illustrate this uncertain situation in which we found ourselves. Firstly, regarding the entry into force of the amendment, there are now two distinct options. The first is the classic method known as tacit acceptance, under which the amendments are considered adopted unless not less than 1/3 of the parties or parties which constitute not less than 50% of the gross tonnage of the world merchant fleet have communicated to the IMO their objection to the amendment within the 10 months after the adoption. The second option, that of explicit acceptance, was specifically introduced into the covering resolution of the amendment at this session following a request by a delegation. Explicit acceptance has never been used for MARPOL amendments. Its process is much closer to that required for the new convention to enter into force. Indeed, in this case, the amendment can only be accepted and entered into force when explicitly 2/3 of the party, which constitute not less than 50% of the gross tonnage of the world merchant fleet, have communicated to the IMO their acceptance of the amendment. With this explicit process, entry into force can take several years or may never happen. This choice between tacit and explicit acceptance will surely be one of the first decisions that the committee will have to make next year. And in fact, before the adjournment, one delegation had requested a vote on this issue, but another delegation asked for a motion to adjourn, which, according to the committee's rule of procedure, takes precedence. Consequently, this vote on the method of acceptance could not take place, as some would have wished last Friday. Another source of uncertainty is linked to the date already included in the text of the new Chapter 5 of Annex VI of MARPOL. This includes, among others, the date of the publication of the first list of recognized sustainable fuel certification schemes, the first year of data collection, the first year of data reporting, or the date for reviewing the amount of remedial units. These dates are clearly in need of review before the plan adoption at the next autumn. Nevertheless, changing these dates could be considered as a substantial modification, potentially requiring a 6-month recirculation of the amendment to all parties to the convention before the actual adoption. A final example of uncertainty concerns the development of guidelines, which is ongoing this week during the international meeting. One might wonder whether this amendment can actually be developed without knowledge of the mandatory net zero framework. Conversely, one might also wonder whether these guidelines should not be developed or even finalized before the mandatory net zero framework is validated. These situations put us right in the middle of a classic chicken and egg problem. Continuing on, Adam will now present the work plan for developing the guideline.
Yes, thank you, Sébastien. And I will just focus on this question called the Hung work plan, because it seems to remain suspended by the vote. Just for the memory, before the vote, the chair could officially approve the report of the working group on the work plan. And they approve the paper, provided that the net zero framework is adopted. And this aspect, this condition, and let enter the work plan in a gray zone. Formally, we cannot say exactly if the contents of the work plan, which are framed within the initial timeline, is feasible. And legally, we cannot say if the document is only submitted, approved, confirmed, and there are different interpretations. So we have a document which is a shadow of the proposed timeline, which were just indicative. And that's a real strange case, because how will we carry works without legal approval? Each session of works is exposed to the same debates. Requests, some delegation will request for delaying the works till the adoption of the net zero framework, and others will request the carrying on of the works to prepare the adoption. The chicken and egg problem applies to the next MEPC 84, 85, which were the initial milestones to approve guidelines to implement the net zero framework. And the items are significant. They are highly political too. Just remember that the net zero framework was just the support of other key decisions which are expected concerning the management of the IMO fund, the management of the IMO GFI registry. It includes a sensitive question on the status of LNG and the approval of the life cycle assessment guidelines. So many political questions, which all, of course, will spark very high debates. So the question now is the capacity of the participants to deliver in time the implementing guidelines. It is maybe the most important race or the challenge to keep afloat the net zero framework. I just mentioned that every cloud has its silver line, and Sébastien will present some positive aspects.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, just with regard to the amendments themselves and beyond any political consideration, even though it is difficult to assess their value at this stage, I would like to mention the work of Ajax whose submission is one of the only one on the implementation of this measure. And this submission has received broad support as he had clarified in the amendment to MARPOL Annex VI, for example, was constitute a new ship, the reporting in connection for the change of company, or the data to be submitted and its format to the administration or recognized organization. Among all these elements, there is one in particular that I would like to highlight, as its clarification is essential for a uniform understanding on how the system works. The amendment was imprecise regarding the use of surplus unit received by a ship for its positive compliance balance. Indeed, a sentence in the draft regulation 36 included the term once for one, making it unclear whether once banked, the surplus unit can be used only for the ship in question or can be banked and transferred to another ship in the following year. In this context, at the beginning, the generation of surplus unit is expected to be limited to a small number of early movers who make significant investment to transition away from fossil fuel. Therefore, the possibility and transferability of this unit acts as a strategic mechanism to reward ships that achieve the compliance, the direct compliance target by transitioning to sustainable fuel early, despite the challenging condition. Therefore, the proposed text on the screen clarifies this, and it is possible to either to bank the surplus unit for the future use on the shipping questions, or to bank them and transfer them to another ship in a subsequent year. To conclude on this, following a request from a delegation, a final element was introduced in the covering resolution. The agreement, particularly from European countries, to include this mention may be seen as a compromise and offer a certain guarantee regarding the prevention of multiplication of regional mechanisms. Adam, the floor is yours to develop the interplay with the UN mechanism.
Thank you, Sébastien. Yes, interplay is between the European Union and the IMO is also the background to which many delegates referred during the discussions. Concerning European Union, last time I told about European leadership, and it seems that this leadership in works has faded clearly during this session, and the coordination between European states were weaker, and the initiative was taken by the main opponents to the framework. So we enter in this question with ETS, which was considered as the example of regionalization, explaining the proposal made by UIA to add this operative paragraph, which was broadly supported and which put moreover the stress on one of the weaknesses of the net zero framework side, if I can say in this way. Paradoxically, the rejection of the net zero framework may prompt the proliferation of regional taxes and accelerate the patchwork of all participants want to avoid. When we consider the EU regulation, I recall that the ETS and the FuelEU Maritime provide that in the event that the IMO does not adopt by 2028 global basket-based measure to reduce greenhouse gas emission, the European Union will consider possibility to extend the application of ETS and FuelEU Maritime more than 50% of the emission from the ships performing voyages between a port of call and under the European jurisdiction and non-European ports. So the risk of an extension of ETS of FuelEU Maritime cannot be excluded in case of no adoption. And just recall also that the FuelEU Maritime and ETS provide that in case of adoption, there should be a process to consider the global standard and engage the process to report on the convergence in order to make consistent or aligned the EU legislation with the IMO standard. I quoted the paragraph 30, article 30.5 of FuelEU, which indicates this question. And of course, the same with ETS, but the question is the timeline, and I will try to show the complexity of the process. I will not detail this slide, which is, of course, to reach too many inputs, but just remember that there are two tracks. The upper tracks is the IMO track, and the yellow is the EU one. That was the first position in April, when we have a timeline, a visibility on the implementation of the Net-Zero Framework, and the possibility of a process within EU institution in order to make reports on the IMO works and to develop a proposal to make convergent both ETS and FuelEU Maritime with the Net-Zero Framework and implement it in time in order to avoid any duplication and the patchwork of regulation, which is, of course, a real burden for ship owners. That was the first position, the plan. And now we are facing an expected situation where the postponements of the works, the postponements of the implementation, the possible implementation of the Net-Zero Framework may also derail the European works. Now, it's very difficult to say if the convergence process will stick to the line or derail, because it's hard to imagine how to engage studies, convergence studies, examination of the works if the NZF is not adopted. And the same question, is it possible to envisage the convergence of the NZF without guidelines? The works are in parallel, there's an interplay between the two levels, and it will be very difficult to know when a proposal may be delivered in order to review, amend ETS and FuelEU. And I finish this slide with the timeline, which nears June 29, where we have elections and the end of the mandate of the parliament. So a very tricky period to work and to make convergent the EU regulation with the Net-Zero Framework, provided that it is implemented. So we face a really tricky question, how to combine the two processes. And that's another part of the uncertainty of the consequences of this adjournment. Sébastien, I let you the floor for collateral consequences.
Thank you, Adam. Yes, this pause has also consequences for a series of amendments that were supposed to be adopted at the same time as the Net-Zero Framework. Indeed, the committee was invited to adopt a consolidated version of Annex VI of MARPOL Convention. And its adjournment notably has consequences for the adoption and the entry into force of the Northeast Atlantic Emission Control Area, which was scheduled to apply to ships constructed on or after 1st January 2027. Other amendments concerning a multiple engine profile were planned, as well as amendments related to certain provisions of the DCS. Here again, at this stage, no date can be planned for the entry into force. It is possible that at the next meeting next year, this amendment will be decoupled from the net zero framework and that their acceptance will be in a tacit mode, regardless of the decision on the net zero framework amendment. This would allow for an orderly entry into force of this non-net zero framework related amendment, despite the current situation. Adam will now continue to develop on this subject of collateral effects.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and then to finish this analysis, three questions, three aspects also to be identified. The adjournment vote sends a signal of deep uncertainty. The work plan now, in the wake of the MEPC, opens new questions from a fast-track process to navigating by sight way of working. That's, of course, a question. But there are also two other points to be noted. For first, MSC package. You know that the MSC works in parallel with MEPC to develop a safety regulatory framework for alternative fuels, for decarbonization technologies. And the momentum, the dynamics of this works is, of course, related to the incentives, regulatory incentives, the Net-Zero framework would have settled. So without clear visibility on the Net-Zero framework, we shall see how MSC will keep the pace to deliver these regulation interim guidelines. And just to finish, we understand now that for IMO, its leadership is at stake, and multilateralism, which was frequently invoked by participants, is of course the background of a wider question than only NZF. Thank you. And now I'll let Julien develop the second part.
Thank you very much, Adam and Sébastien, for the very insightful presentation. So we definitely find ourselves in a period of significant uncertainty, but our commitments at Bureau Veritas remains unwavering to our clients. So we just want to emphasize one clear message is Bureau Veritas will continue to do what we do best, which is supporting you. So in particular, I want to emphasize within the IACS, International Association of Classification Society, we will continue to actively participate in IMO debates and discussion to assist member states with expertise and guidance and maintain our commitment to listening and understanding industry needs. As the committee chair noted or said last week in London, mutual understanding and listening is crucial at this juncture, and we are dedicated to being a collaborative partner in these challenging times. So for the next part of our presentation, I'm very pleased to introduce OptiCARBON, which is our innovative solution for developing decarbonization strategies. While it's not a silver bullet for IMO challenges and the IMO crisis that we have, it represents our proactive approach to supporting the maritime industry transition. So even in uncertain time, Bureau Veritas continue to develop practical tools to help our client navigating a complex maritime landscape. So without further ado, Jordan, please, the floor is yours to introduce OptiCARBON. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Now that we have discussed how maritime regulation can be complex and evolve every month, I would like to present our solution to turn this complexity into a strength. This solution is called OptiCARBON and is an advanced web-based SaaS, meaning a software as a service. And the idea is to support our clients in decarbonization strategy over time with full Bureau Veritas support. Lots of different users can be identified, but the top beneficiaries are ship owners, operators, and charterers for different segments. The passenger segment with ferry, ro-ro, cruise, but also the cargo ships with tankers, LNG carriers, bulk carriers, container ships, and more. There are already a lot of software available for monitoring consumption, and it is possible to generate reports or predict tax costs based on the ship's current situation. But they simply tell the user how much its company will pay without providing solutions to reduce these costs. They are showing you the whole approaching without helping navigate around it. And this is where we differ. We are offering both a product and a service to help fleet managers avoid paying for what was predicted. Our goal is to build cost reduction strategies with our clients. And to achieve this, we associate all operational and technological possibilities with the return on investment calculations, helping the users choose the most profitable initiatives. So for example, we can do speed optimization, onshore power supply optimization, pooling strategies, fuel selection. We can work on wind-assisted propulsion systems and more. So OptiCARBON was created to address 4 needs. The first is that it will cost millions in carbon taxes for lots of ship owners and charterers, and we want to work with them to reduce these taxes. The second point is that regulation constantly evolves, making compliance challenging. That's why we want to offer a software as a service, meaning that we continuously update calculations as new regulation take effect, and we also arrange regular meetings to keep our clients updated. The third point is that making strategic fleet decision, but based on individual vessel data is complex. And our tool provides voyage level granularity while helping the users identify the most cost-effective solution, but from a fleet management perspective. The last need is that lots of companies have already thought about all of this, but they are doing it using a spreadsheet or equivalent, and they are not sure about their calculation and can't work effectively with their colleagues. So that's why we offer this user-friendly, all-in-one solution designed for team efficiency. How we can set up the application. It's really easy from the vessel owner or charterer. We only need them to provide vessel characteristics and their operating profiles. After that, BV Solution, the advisory branch of Bureau Veritas, we digitalize the fleet, we implement the operating profiles in the tool in OptiCARBON, and we build decarbonization strategies with the clients. And the last point of this slide is that OptiCARBON is then delivered to the client, and they can create and test different decarbonization strategies. In this example, we see different scenarios, and in the second one, we can see some technological upgrade to a certain vessel on a certain year, then another operating change, onshore power supply, etc. I think I can now share you my screen so that it's easier to understand how the tool works. Here you can see this is a web-based tool, so I'm just connected to internet with my credentials. I can connect, and then I have my scenarios. I have made 2 strategies, for instance, and I can also see the strategy of my colleagues if it's public ones. Let's open this one. First, I will show you the vessels. Here is a demonstration version to show you that we can deal with all of these vessels. So we have tanker, we have containers here, bulk carriers, LNGC, ferry, general cargo, And we even have cargo under construction. This is just to show you that we can have a vessel, new build vessel implemented in the tool even during the construction, so that you can understand and see the impact of the vessel inside your fleet, comparing the different FuelEU maritime taxes, for instance. And in this tab, for every vessel, you can create configurations. For instance, we have this ferry, and I can create a configuration which is a retrofit. If I want to test it and if I want to apply this in the future. So we have in this example a propeller retrofit which costs 750,000 euros as capex and with a propulsion efficiency of 2%. That's what we can do in this tab. Then we have the operating profiles. In here, we have lots of different operating profiles representing a year of operation for the vessels. You can create new ones, copy, change the speed, try lots of things here. And for this example, we have here two lines. The first one between Ras Tanura and Mumbai with some departure time, arrival time, travel duration, average speed. It's easy to change everything, try things, and we can even choose if the voyage is in ballast or laden condition, so that the speed power curve used for the calculation for the consumption is not the same. And we have a second line here, for instance, between Rotterdam, Immingham. It can be then a third port, etc. We can have all the operating profiles here. Then you have the scheduling part. The scheduling, it's associating for every vessel the fuels used for the different engines. So for the ferry, it's LNG, for instance. I can change to other fuel, try to see the impact. Same for the auxiliary engines, the boilers, the battery, if we have in the vessel, and the configuration, if I want to apply my retrofit in a certain year. Same for the operating profiles. We can test all of this here. That's just it. And then you have the outputs. For the outputs, you have different types. You have the CII rating here with all the calculations in the tooltip. You have the graph. You have the consumptions for every fuel. So let's take this one. We have the consumption. We can export it. We have the total. And we have all type of emissions. We have the greenhouse gas emission from a well-to-wake basis, the graph associated, the CO2 emissions also, and a tank-to-wake basis, etc. And we can export it. Then we have the FuelEU maritime module, which is a complex one with the intensity in Europe. We have the targets. Everything is included in the calculations. When I say that, I mean the optimization of an international voyage with the use of biofuel, a mixed biofuel during the voyage could be implemented in Europe. You have the intensity here, the reference, the fleet pooling, and the penalty estimate if the fleet pooling, for instance, is above the reference. You have then the costs. For every year, for every vessel, the total, and it includes those for the moment, the ETS cost, the fuel cost, shore connection also, and FuelEU maritime penalty cost. If the user says that he wants to have the operational cost included, it's easy also to include, as this tool is made modular, meaning that it's easy to adapt to the client, add new KPI here, and remove the FuelEU maritime if it's not rating in Europe, etc. We also have implemented the Net-Zero Framework Global Fuel Intensity module. Even if it's not adopted, it's still interesting to see what impact it could have on the different clients we have, and see the penalty estimate for their fleet, the impact on the wallet. I can now show you how this tool can be used. It's just an example, but let's say that for this ferry, the end of compliance in CII is 2030. okay, because I have 3 D letter in a row. So I want to change this D letter and turn it into a C letter. I open here the simulation tab, which is a place where we have lots of data for the vessel, for the operating profiles. You can test lots of different parameters. For instance, you can change the configuration for a certain year, the operating profiles, you can test a lot of them, fuels, the shore connection also. You can force it so that you understand if it's interesting or not to electrify your vessel. You can turn it off, change the amount of battery used on average over the year. And it depends, of course, of the availability of the shore power at K, which is included in the database. And then you have the results for the different lines here, and even inside the lines you have the voyage. So, for instance, between Portsmouth and Saint-Malo, and inside it you have even the separation between the seagoing phase and the dock phase. So you have it. You have the itinerary here, the CII, the consumption. You also have the emission and financial information with lots of data. So let's say now I want to change my CII letter. So first thing I can try is apply my retrofit, my propeller retrofit we just saw. Okay, the value is reduced, but it's not enough to change the letter because we want to be below this value here. Okay, I can try to have some biofuel mix instead of LNG. Okay, reduce the value, it's still not enough. And then I can change my operating profiles to have a speed reduced, and so less time in the call duration, but more in the seagoing phase. Now it's working. I have the C letter. Let's now apply it to my scheduling. Here I change my fuel. Okay, I apply for the years after. Same for the retrofits, for the propeller retrofit and the speed. So it's the same operating profile, but the speed is reduced. You have then the outputs, and here for the ferry, we have the C letter in 2030 and no more end of compliance for this ferry. You can do this for the CII, but you can also work on the FuelEU Maritime, make shore power management. You can do lots of things in this tool, and we adapt it to every client we have. One more feature I want to show you is this one, the optimization tool. It's very easy to understand. You choose your vessel. Let's stay with the ferry. You choose your year, for instance, and 2035. And what you can see here is in red the total cost curve. And you see that there is an optimal in that year with the scheduling I have applied, meaning that 6% of biofuel is the optimal from the total cost point of view. And it allowed me to try to secure this quantity for this certain year, for instance. And you can do this for every vessel you have. Now, I'd like to come back to the slides for one last slide. Brittany Ferries has been using this tool about 2 years now. They use it in different ways, as you can see here. They use it for compliance cost management, fuel and onshore power supply strategy, and schedule validation. And by the way, the last one is a big module, which I haven't shown you. It is used for planning verification, and it includes advanced algorithm such as the one that checks the tides for every port. This means that you can be sure your vessel will have access at a specific time. If you want to know more about OptiCARBON and how Brittany Ferries uses it, I'm going to present a webinar on the next 5 of October. And Brice Robinson, Project and Studies Manager at Brittany Ferries, will be a special guest. So for that, just look at the coming slide. There will be a QR code to register. And if you are interested in the tool for now, you can find my contact details at the end of this presentation or directly on the OptiCARBON website. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Jordan, for the very insightful presentation. So now we'll move on to the question session. So please, Adam, Sebastian, if you can come back. We do have a lot of questions that are spanning a vast area of topics. I will start. There is one on food security. What is the content of the discussion regarding food security during MEPC? So, Adam, if you want to take this question, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. Very relevant because food security issue sparked during the comprehensive impact assessment works and the report delivered by UNCTAD. When the assessment of the impacts of the market-based measures should have been the basis of the Net-Zero Framework. During the discussion at MEPC 82, there were clear questions on the topic with reservation from some countries, with the tricky question because it's very hard to assess such impacts. There's no business case, and it's not easy to tackle a legitimate fear. Within the MEPC 83, there was a regulation based on a request from Egypt, representing other countries, which try to address the question. The regulation 43 provides that the committee shall address, include avoiding, remedying, and mitigating the disproportionately negative impacts of this chapter on food security, paying particular attention to countries exposed to food insecurity. So it was a diplomatic answer to the question, which reappeared during the MEPC Extraordinary Session as another way to contest the Net-Zero Framework.
Thank you very much, Adam. But it's true that this topic was heavily raised by some of the members, so it's one of the questions. Thank you very much. So now we move on with another question we have is, I think it's for Sebastian, is regarding CI reduction factor. So for the year 2027 and to 2030, they were included in the amendment that were not adopted last week. So what happened with this CI reduction factor? Are they in force or not?
Thank you for the question. In fact, those reduction factor for 2027 to 2030, in fact, has been already been adopted at MEPC 83 this year through the G3 guideline, the CI reduction factor guideline. So it's not linked to the amendment which are in consideration now. So I can confirm that those reduction factors are enforced. And in fact, in my presentation related to the amendment on the DCS which are pending, it was in fact related to the anonymization of the data, which was part of the legal MARPOL text, in fact, but not related to this reduction factor for the CI.
Okay, thank you. Then the next question is about EU ETS and FuelEU maritime regulation. Who decide when and how the review of these two EU regulation will be conducted? Maybe Adam?
The regulation decides of the process. FuelEU Maritime and ETS directive includes provisions entitling European Commission to provide examination and reports of the convergence between European standard and IMO standards. That's a really, really technical question implying the problem of data, the problem of different way to calculate emission default factors, pathways for alternative fuels based on European legislation. So all the architecture which is really colossal to build EU ETS or FuelEU Maritime has to be delved into with a proposal then submitted to the Parliament and the Council in the classic trilogue with European Commission to amend the regulation.
Okay, thank you very much. Then the next question is for Sébastien. When will the IMO DCS 2024 data be released? So it's basically the fuel report from last year. It's not released yet. Do we have information on this data, when they will be released?
Yes, normally they should be submitted at the next MEPC meeting, which means the next meeting next year. So at MEPC 84 in normally April or May next year.
Okay, thank you very much. So the next question will be for Adam. It's about basket of measure. So the basket of measure, just to give some context, there was a certain number of measure, 10 that were streamed down to 8 and then streamed down to 1. That was the process that we took leading to April. There is a question on the approved proposal is to be reconsidered on the NZF. Is there a possibility that this concept of a basket of measure, including both the economic and the regulatory approach, may also change? So do you want to take that question? Yeah.
Yes, of course, it's always possible to submit such amendments to the basket of midterm measures based on this basket, based on the rainbow document, which included all the different scenarios and solutions to decarbonize shipping. But that means substantive amendments. And it's not editorial, and it will reopen first round of discussion, of negotiation, the possibility of any other amendments. That's like the Pandora box. I mean, we will spark a new debate with a divided assembly, which will not favor one technical solution to overcome the question. So any new substantive amendments will have also consequences because it has to be approved, it has to be adopted, and it changes completely the timeline of Net-Zero Framework. That means there's a cascade, a slew of amendments changing all the timelines included in other regulations. That's the reason why it's quite complex, and that's a real risk to undermine the calendar of Net-Zero Framework.
Okay, well noted. Thank you very much. Then we have a question on the SU, the surplus unit. Obviously, the NZF has not been adopted, but we can still develop on that. Can a vessel use its own banked surplus unit, SU, for Tier 1 compliance deficit for the next year? So, Sébastien, if you want to take that question.
Yes. In fact, the Tier 1 deficit can be only balanced through remedial units acquired to the GHG fund. So that means you cannot balance your Tier 1 even if you have banked a surplus unit for your Tier 1. Tier 1 should only be balanced through a pricing mechanism. Only the Tier 2 can be either used through the banking or transfer from another ship. So to answer to the question, no, you cannot balance your Tier 1 compliance with a surplus unit that you have banked.
Okay, thank you very much. There was a question, but I can't see it anymore on the ECA. Sorry, mixing up things. So, Sebastian, do you remember this question? Maybe it's worth to repeat. I mean, one of the collateral, in a way, damage of the non-adoption about the ECA. Maybe if you want to repeat what you said.
Yes, exactly. In fact, unfortunately, what was proposed to the adoption at this exceptional meeting was a consolidated version, a full version of the Annex VI of MARPOL Convention, which in fact include other amendments which had nothing to do with the Net Zero Framework. And in particular, there was this proposal of adoption, which had been approved at the last MEPC meeting, related to a new ECA, a North Atlantic, the Northeast Atlantic Sea ECA, which unfortunately, due to what happened last week, has not been adopted. So at this point in time, this new ECA has not been adopted. It's the only thing we can say. But as I indicated, there are a possibility, a will from the committee next year to decouple this amendment to the question and the decision and possibly the vote related to the Net Zero Framework in order to orderly have an entry into force of this new ECA.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have reached the end of this webinar. So we'll conclude with this last remark. So thank you very much for attending. We hope you find it fruitful. You'll be redirected to our webpage where you can also download the report from the MEPC ES2 session that provide a lot of insights. So thank you very much for your attendance, and we will be happy to see you in our next webinars. Thank you very much and have a good day.